Do you ever think about the future? Let me explain. 1 year ago, I started this hardcore world. Things were a lot different back then. For instance, I had to punch trees with my bare fist. I made tools, developed farming systems, even made some friends. As time went on, my tools, they improved, my farms, they advanced, and my friends, they went to jail. Somewhere in there, I even learned how to fly. Pretty fun, right? Wrong. Like any capitalist, I became power hungry, using the infinite tools at my disposal to destroy the very land I once loved. But that changes today, because in this video, I'm rebuilding everything from the ground up, and I guarantee you have never seen anything like this before. Welcome, my friends, to the future. Also, I only have 1 week to complete this, or my cat Dennis is probably going to leave me forever, so let's just not think about that and yeah, get working. Before I could actually begin building, I first had to learn what the heck cyberpunk even was. Now, according to Google, it's a genre of science fiction set, or in simple terms, big buildings, robots, and sad people. I spent the next few hours just slamming cyberpunk-esque keywords into Pinterest and seeing what came up that looked actually cool and like something that I could actually build. Before long, I found a bunch of these pictures that are referred to as voxel art, which essentially means that they're pixel art, but in 3D. Okay, so I think I've finally found something that will be a good template to help me start building. There's this voxel cyberpunk town by Elena Dudnikova. I think I can actually build like this first building here. I can do that, I think. And like any good build, the first thing I needed was a good dirt outline. Cue the montage. And now it's time to outline. My only real goal for today was to get one building done, just to prove that I could actually do it. I wasn't really sure of the scale yet of these buildings, so I just outlined a shape that was close enough to the inspo pic that I could actually work off of it. Before long, the outline was done, and it was time to get materials collected. And this is where the farms I built last episode would really come in handy. And yes, I do mean the episode from 5 months ago. With the material collected, it was time to get building. To begin, I placed in a beacon with jump boost, and from there started placing blocks from the ground up. Right now, I had literally no idea what I was doing. I started with these big, bright windows with sea lanterns, and then placed in what I guess would be a sign with some light blue concrete. To be more efficient, I spent a majority of my time adding details to the front side of the build as opposed to the sides, because that's what you'll actually see when you walk or fly through here. After killing this wandering trader for trespassing, I began building up this square thing. I'm calling it a square thing because I have no idea what it is. I just remember thinking, yeah, this looks cool, and then going with the flow. I stopped by to say hi to my friends in jail. Did you know they can sell you stuff? Immediately, I broke my own rule, I guess, because I added in these big, huge windows on the sidewall that nobody's ever going to see before I began working more on the front side. Working my way up to the top of the build, I added in this big red heart because I guess you needed to be reminded that this is a Minecraft video. Yeah. I went back through and added in some lettering to this building. I named it Wood. Wait, Wood? What does that even mean? Before adding in some details with some blackstone walls, trapdoors, even this big shroom light power strip along the side. Then I built this cute little archway entrance thing out of wool, and then built up this piping system that I guess imagined would like take the resources from this building and then send them to the storage up above. I then spent the remainder of the day adding in various odds and ends of detail, as well as these roof pillars that give off like a neon yellowish smog, which I think is actually a pretty cool detail. And just like that, my friends, the first building is complete. Did it take me 15 hours to make? Yeah, it did. Do I like it? Kind of, but I guess it's done, and that's really what matters right now. Before day 2 of building, I needed some more inspiration. You see, about a year ago, I downloaded this game called Stray, which is where you wander aimlessly through this post-apocalyptic world as a cat. Apart from being pretty fun and absolutely adorable, this game is full of cyberpunk inspiration. I basically spent the 5 hours of playtime in this game wandering around taking screenshot after screenshot of a building or a sign that I thought would look cool, and before long, I had a pretty big library of images saved up. Okay, yeah, that was fun, but back to Minecraft. Back in the hardcore world, I took a trip over to the mesa to collect some terracotta and then began outlining, you guessed it, building number 2. I was definitely feeling more confident than yesterday, but still overall very clueless. And so I kept the same reference image, but allowed myself a little bit more freedom to actually freestyle things with the shaping. Before long, the outline was complete, so I began working on the front facade, just like in the first building. And this is where the first revelation happened. I'm talking about lighting. To me, Cyberpunk is like this perfect blend of dark and gloomy with like bright neon lights. So how do you combine bright lights with dark and gloomy? The answer, as it turns out, is with a gradient, or basically where one color gradually changes to a different color. Look at these two signs. Oh, sorry, yeah, ignore that. That's for a future video. The first one is just purple. I mean, it looks good, doesn't look bad by any means. The one on the right, however, starts with purple concrete powder and then slowly transitions its way into a darker block like blue terracotta. You can literally see the light fading into darkness, and that is what adds so much life to this build. I used this very technique to add a couple of signs to the front and then began working on one of many apartment buildings. I'm serious, I build a lot of these things, so I'm just warning you now, get used to it. Using the different colored frog lights as well as various colors of concrete and concrete powder, you can get a lot of different colors and shades in here. I also did the opposite with some of them by going through with blackstone to maybe suggest that they're like abandoned or something. Things were going pretty good right now. I could feel my brain getting bigger with every single block that I place. Okay, and now that the first half of the building was pretty much done, I wanted to go ahead and build these 3 massive signs along the top half of the building. I wasn't sure what to put on the signs at first, but eventually had the idea to maybe build a fire emoji. It's my favorite one. For the second sign, I built some weird condensed version of my name, like N2B or something, which I guess is like a little bit conceited, but I also think it just looks really good. And then finish things off with a simple neon green sign with these like diagonal line things. Going back through with more roof pillars, this time with much taller ones of varying colors, I added in more smog with various colored frog lights and blocks flowing in the same direction to, I guess, like simulate some wind or something along those lines. Either way, I was definitely liking what I built so far today a lot more than yesterday, which was a good sign. All right, well, day 2 is also coming to a close. Not really happy about that, but the second building is complete, and the good news is that I like it a lot better than day 1's building. It did still take me 12 hours to complete though, and that is not acceptable at this point. I knew if I wanted to actually finish this city in 1 week, I had to call in the big guns. So meet my friend, Dame the Dime. Dame is a homie of mine who builds some of the craziest things you've ever seen in Minecraft, all inside of his own hardcore world. How would you describe the Cyberpunk build style?
It's really bright. It's violently bright. It's a really complex build style to make it work. It definitely would not be a first build style that I would do.
By now I've learned 2 things. 1, Cyberpunk is very complex, and 2, I'm an idiot for trying it. Alright man, be honest with me. How do you like what I've built so far?
The build itself, I think, looks wicked. It looks lifeless in terms of people being there.
Over the course of this conversation, Dame gave me a lot more useful building tips, and I even shared with him some future plans I have for this project. I have an idea. I might...
Oh no.
I spent the rest of day 3 actually building, this time with a lot more insight. The main tip that Dame gave me was to learn where and when to use detail, or more particularly, when not to use detail. For instance, I built the first 2 buildings as full 3D shapes, when in reality I'm never going to fly behind them in the first place, so who cares? Also, most of the Cyberpunk reference photos that I have are actually a bunch of small buildings kind of smushed together to make one large city block. And realizing this was a game changer. By the end of day 3, I had the front facades outlined on the entire back city block. And imagining these buildings as like smaller pieces of a larger puzzle was really helping me imagine what the details would look like when everything was finished here. All right, so day 3 is coming to a close. This was a good one. My brain is absolutely filled with ideas right now. So yeah, even though there's like a ton more work to do still, I feel like I have a bit more of a plan right now. On day 4, I was back in full build mode. I installed some beacons to help me build faster, and from there, there, I got to work. The theme today was less think and more build. The concepts I've used so far of like a mix of apartment buildings and large signs was good, but now it was time to put it into action. Before long, I had an entire set of buildings outlined, and continued with another set of pillars along the top as with the theme, this time with purple and magenta as the colors. Things are actually going really good right now, besides the fact that I seem to have made a mob farm underneath of the build and also got myself trapped under bedrock, you know, pretty casual stuff. Alright, more and more of the buildings are actually starting to come together right now. I feel like I'm getting in a bit of a groove. And I have this really weird, crazy idea, but I think that we can pull it off. Yeah, I built the pineapple. Taking some inspiration from the cityscape I've built so far, I wanted to add in some more outside influence to the build, bringing in this giant Pac-Man on the front side of this building. I know Pac-Man's like technically from the 80s, but it has this retro vibe that I think fits in the city very well. On day 5, I placed in more blocks. Wait, what? I placed in more blocks. Who wrote this script? Why would I write that? And now I was left with this giant empty space between two buildings, but I had an idea for how to tie them together. Oh my god, okay, so hear me out, guys. What if we build a sky bridge? Oh my god, yes, we're building a sky bridge. I guess the better term here is actually sky tunnel because it's like fully enclosed, but the idea is that it's made almost fully with glass so it lets lots of light in. Using a bunch of sea lanterns, I was able to backlight the entire tunnel, and from there added in a floor with various different cyan colors. There were two things I wanted this city to accomplish as a whole. Firstly, I wanted it to look good from a distance. I feel like I was actually doing that so far. The second thing was that I wanted this city to look really good up close, and that was where I was lacking. To do this, I would need to get a lot more creative and build more than just a bunch of neon signs. One of the themes I noticed while researching cyberpunk was the heavy influence of Japanese style architecture. Regardless of the why, I can't deny that places like Tokyo look very cyberpunk with their neon signs and crowded side streets. By day 6, I took some more inspiration from a crammed side street, and in addition to building up more apartment buildings, I started experimenting with slanted roofs at various heights to add in more depth and life to the build. I figured that using a similar block palette for most of these roofs would be a good idea, that way they don't take away from the main details. I also began experimenting with more advanced texturing through here to kind of showcase where buildings were damaged or weathering over time. I was zooming through the build at this point. It felt like every hour I had another apartment building constructed. It's actually crazy to think that just like a few days ago, I had to build this entirely based off an image online, and now I'm just like freehanding it from my brain. I finished off day 6 by adding in this cute detail of like a little fish market down at the bottom. I don't know, I feel like $1.99 for fish is a pretty good price. I'd pay that. All right, guys, so it's currently day 7, which means today is the last day to finish building this entire city. The last couple buildings were pretty much the same. Apartments, AC units, these big blue and purple signs. I even mixed things up here and tried to build a massive roof on top. Before I knew it, the entire front facade of the buildings were complete, and now I was just left with the sidewalls. But as it turns out, if I filled in these walls completely solid, the TNT from my nether tree farm would actually blow a hole in them. My only workaround was to lean into this a bit and make a giant hole in the wall myself as if an explosion went off. I went through using lots of different textures to simulate cracks and damage, as well as lots of burning netherrack and blackstone for like ash and debris. Well, that was a happy accident, but man, that looks really cool. Time was ticking. I realized now that the first half of the city was lacking compared to the second half, so I spent the rest of the day going back through adding in more detail. More roofs, AC units, and lots of texturing. I found this website called HueBlocks, where you basically input 2 different Minecraft blocks, and it generates a gradient between them. This was very helpful because it told me exactly what blocks to use to add texture to the plain, flat concrete walls that I had built previously. And as day 7 came to a close, so did the city itself. At least that's what I thought, but nothing happened. I waited, and then I waited some more. I tried to DM him, but nothing. Dennis was gone. Dennis always was gone. I saw the string there on the ground that day. The TNT bombers, all of the farms, this entire city city for nothing. I'm telling you now, this story is just beginning. You see, these videos take literal months to record and edit, and it felt like I was just grinding alone in my office day in and day out until finally one day I hit the upload button and then the process just restarts. I needed some more connection, and that's where you guys come in. Okay, let's be real. Right now, the city was not complete. In fact, it was far from done. So I decided to build the rest of it on stream with you. The live streaming journey started over on Twitch at the beginning of the year, but as I began interacting with you all, more and more ideas started flowing in. We decided to take the massive step and begin working on a main street going through the city filled with potholes and a bunch of like these water puddles. And this would take the city from like a one-dimensional wall of large buildings to an entirely new immersive feel with a busy Tokyo-esque side street. With the street done, I experimented with some smaller, more abandoned and textured buildings on the other side before actually going through and outlining the rest of the buildings. These buildings would be a lot smaller in size compared to the back wall to keep the view, but they would have way more detail up close. I spent the first few streams building various colors of buildings with lots of new blocks, including mushroom stems, that's a first, as well as making a couple large vertical signs. And after lots of thought, I finally had an idea for how to incorporate you guys into the build itself. Taking a break from the main structure for a bit, I began digging out a massive area behind the main nether portal. I was imagining creating this massive room with a large staircase and expanding part of the city into the underground. After a few hours, most of the digging was done. Yeah, for sure, Brock. And then I began outlining smaller buildings along the sides. The idea here was that I wanted to turn these into sort of a miniature version of the actual city that's on the outside. Next up was the ceiling, and for this, somebody had a great idea of turning it into a starry nighttime sky, so I went through with a bunch of black concrete, black glass, and even some end rods to act as the stars themselves, and this looks amazing. Oh yeah, I should probably tell you that this part of the build is what I'm calling the Melon Hall, which is a museum that I'm building inside of this world for you. You redeem it by simply watching the streams, and when you do so, you get your own custom enclosure with an armor stand, and it's totally permanent. By now, I dug myself a pretty big hole. Get it? And I wanted to ultimately connect this area up to the city. After some brainstorming, I decided that a subway system would be a really cool detail to add. To begin, I started clearing out this massive room before digging out the middle section for the tracks. The floors were simple enough with cobbled deep slate and these black yellow bits that looked like guardrails on the end. I even got to experiment with smaller details like these departure and arrival sections with like vending machines and small benches. So much fun. Then came the ceiling, followed by the tracks, and then the subway itself. Okay, yeah, just kidding. That is the Alaskan bullworm. It took me a long time to get the shaping right, but eventually I landed on a design for the train that I'm pretty proud of, using stone, dark prismarine, warped wood, and acacia. I kept the interior pretty simple so I can add details later. By now, the subway was looking pretty cool, but I still felt like it was lacking a little bit of life. So to fix this, I started working on the sidewalls, going in with this fog effect using colored glass and end rods. It looks like a hyperspeed tunnel entering a wormhole or something like that. I don't really know, but it's really cool. And now the subway was done, but I still had one more idea to add to it. You see, by now I'd been streaming consistently for about a month or so, and I figured that making a gigantic subway map art with banners and locations honoring my Twitch mods would be so much fun. I mean, yeah, it took 70,000 white concrete and about 15 hours of my time, but it was way worth it in the end. Okay, well, that was a fun segue, or should I say subway? I'm sorry. But now it was back to the city, this time starting on the front sides of the buildings. I wanted these to be very detailed because I'll be looking at them constantly. Having lots of smaller shops was something that I envisioned, so I began building what would eventually become a cat cafe. I even did some redstone and made the letters flicker. Then I added this cyber bike thing in the garage. I swear to God, if any of you tell me it's a snail, I'm banning you. Then I began upping my sign game by making these cool shades on the roof. Next to that was a ramen shop, and apart from being adorable, I realized here that I could pretty much make any shop I wanted to as long as the billboard was cool. The next few streams were extremely fun. I built a tree shop, a coffee shop, a skate shop. Every day on stream stream, we were coming up with so many cool building ideas. More apartments, an arcade, a karaoke bar, heck, even a real bar. My building confidence was at an all-time high right now. I was learning that as long as I kept shape in mind, I could pretty much build with any block that I wanted to. As the weeks went on, the city got a gym, a pizza place, a mechanic, heck, even an ice cream shop. This place had hot dogs, tacos, shoes. I mean, the city had it all right now. Not to mention the fact that through a different stream reward, a bunch of you guys got a permanent spot along the city street. I mean, look at you, it's so cool. For the first time since its creation, my hardcore world was feeling a lot less lonely. By now, I was a little bit burnt out from exteriors, so I took a break to do some interior planning. And I made sure to keep the bedrock a part of the floor just to flex a little bit. I did a little bit of interior work with this storage area for the mob heads, which by the way, I use a data pack for that. And I even took a day to build this cat cafe, which is so adorable. I said earlier in the video that I wanted to connect the Melon Hall subway system up to the city directly, and now it was time to do that, starting with an insanely long tunnel. The main tunnel consisted of a series of archways, followed by the floor, and eventually these wall decorations. Okay, so now that the tunnel itself is dug out, I need to dig all the way down to bedrock to actually connect this up to the city. I don't think it's very cyberpunk, but this purple blackstone spirally tunnel thing is so cool, and it ties the entire build together. To better utilize the space so it's not just entirely a boring hole in the ground, I tested the idea of adding in more hyperspeed portals along the edges, kind of like the ones that I built in the subway. I thought it looked pretty good, so I ended up building 5 portals on each side of different colors. The idea here is simple. The pink portal on one side leads to the pink portal on the other side. To further sell the ideas that these are actually portals you can travel through, I tried my hand at building a couple of flying car spaceship things, and then built around it as if the portal was passing the object through. That was a good start. Next up, I wanted a simple way to fill the massive area of untouched bedrock, so I began building up these ancient city ruins. The idea here is that these buildings were once part of an older city that had been destroyed when the cyberpunk city came to life. I spent the next couple of days finishing up the exterior buildings, adding in more and more moss and greenery to suggest that this section has been long abandoned. And now it's time for arguably my favorite detail of the entire city. I wanted to connect up these portals with a bunch of wires and make it look kind of like a computer motherboard or like a wiring diagram of sorts. I used a gradient of calcite going all the way into blackstone to add more shading, and even though it took about 15 hours of work, this was such an amazing detail in the city. And with that, my friends, the city was officially complete. Wait, what? Hold up, wait a second. What are these coordinates that I just received? All right, we're getting pretty close to the coordinates that I received. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be looking for. Whoa, what in the heck is this? What even is that? Hold up, wait, what? Oh my, I am extremely creeped out right now. What the heck is going, what is this? There's this like temple thing. Hello, dude, what's going on? Dear Brock, I never actually liked you. Get pranked. Thanks for the city though, Dennis. Oh my god, you are a psychopath.